Middle of the country, but not middle of the road opinions. It's the podcast dedicated to sports in the air capital of the world.
I'm going to Wichita.
Wichita, Kansas, and beyond. With Tommy Castor and Weston Mills, this is Keeper of the Games.
Hey, what's up? Welcome into Keeper of the Games. We are, of course, the podcast that focuses on everything sports related, all your favorite sports topics in the air capital, Wichita, Kansas, and beyond. I'm Tommy Castor, along with Weston Mills, back for another episode. Weston, how's everything going, man?
Good, man. This question is the same every time, but it's more of the same. We actually opened up here in Johnson County today. I'm not sure what I want to say it's at 50% capacity almost for all businesses. I didn't venture out, so I couldn't tell you whether there was mayhem or not, but probably more same for me. I'm going to keep working from home probably at least for another few weeks before we roll in. My work's pretty doable, whether it's at home or at the office. So not a lot of change for me, man.
Yeah, things in Wichita still kind of in that phase one, obviously, of that opening plan. And then we'll hopefully get into phase two, and then things will start to get back to normal for sure. We want to remind you to connect with us. First off, you can go to our website, cogpod.weebly.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can listen on all of the major podcast platforms out there. We're talking about iTunes and Google Play, Spotify, pretty much anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast, you can find Keeper of the Games, and you can follow us on social media. You can watch full episodes on Facebook and YouTube. Just search for Keeper of the Games and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CogPod. That's at KOG Pod. So it only took us 16 episodes to actually get to finally having a guest on Keeper of the Games. We figured that it was about time to bring somebody into the podcast. And so we are really thrilled and really excited to welcome my friend and pretty much all around Wichita Renaissance man, Matt Baty, into the program today. Matt, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Weston. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you.
So, first off, full disclosure, you and I have known each other for a long time and a few years now. And so it was just natural for our very first guest to have somebody who is so connected, somebody that I know, first off personally, but somebody so connected in the world of sports in Wichita and across the state. So I guess give folks, first off, your background for those that don't really know you.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity to come on. I've been listening to the show, the podcast, and obviously we took a little venture into some radio for a little bit together, and that's where we really came close. And we've always talked about the podcast world and how to get into it. So I'm glad to see you and Weston living out the dream there, because you guys are doing a great job, and I think it's needed in the Wichita area. So good job there. No, I'm a graduate from the University of Kansas, graduated in 2006 with a degree in sports administration. Before that, went to Mays High School, graduated in 2002. And all my life, I've been involved in sports somehow. My dad's been in the bowling business for 40 years. So been around the bowling game, and then played baseball all my life, soccer, basketball, but, got a opportunity to go play baseball into college and got a scholarship at the University of Kansas. And the rest is history there. But, it started my career in sports administration, went and did an internship at the Big 12 Conference. And then I went back to KU and worked in marketing as a marketing coordinator, and then went down to Wichita State, was assistant AD there, leading the fundraising efforts there for a few years, and then jumped out of the space for a little bit and out of the sports world and got into banking. Can you believe that? And so learned so much. It was that was probably one of the most fun times I've had in a career, just because I was so hungry to learn. I knew nothing about banking, and so I learned a ton. And fortunate enough was to have a relationship with my mentor, Brad Elliott, who's CEO of Equity Bank. And so I learned a lot from him, and I carry those things on. And then had an opportunity to open up a multi-sports facility in Wichita called the Wichita Sports Forum, and ran that from construction to the first year, and then had an opportunity to go back home to alma mater and led the fundraising efforts for the Williams Education Fund for 3 years. And then had new administration came in and made some changes, and here I am now. Started a consulting company, MB Consulting, and help out with Pterodine Country Club, Chicken and Pickle. We tried the radio station deal, and I'm back here at the Wichita Sports Forum. So long story, but hopefully all that made sense.
So we want to talk a little bit about the Wichita Sports Forum, which, you spend a lot of your time now working with the efforts at the Sports Forum. Before we get into the main topic about the Sports Forum, what has the last 2 months been like for a facility like the Wichita Sports Forum that, obviously relies on the public to come in and use that facility with everything that's gone on? I mean, what has the last couple months looked like for you?
I've had every emotion in this building. It's a big building. If you've never been in, it's 120,000 square feet. And it's, when the lights are out, the walls start speaking to you. It's weird in here. So it was, unfortunately, we had to, just like everybody else, had to figure out a game plan, and we quickly went to that. We had to lay off all of our staff. Most of our staff is high school aged. So we laid off around 70 employees. So that was never fun, having those conversations. And then, what was crazy about it is the day that we got shut down, we had a big vintage market days in our facility when it dropped down to 50 people. And so we had a massive event in the middle of it. We're listening on the TV to the Sedgwick County commissioners, and it was just crazy. It just felt like we were living in another world. And then, from then on, it's been myself in the facility with the ownership group popping in here and there, but, really just getting things in preparation. And what we're going to talk about is the league. It was birthed through COVID. And as we sat here and kind of talked to myself and talked to ownership group, Timber Lee, the manager of the ownership group, just started kicking around ideas. And so that's what we've really been doing, is just trying to get in preparation to opening and getting the facility ready. And if you've been in here, we have 60,000 foam blocks. I can show you pictures right now. We brought staff back starting today, and they're cleaning out the foam pits. One of the things that was crucial for us to open up is we wanted brand new foam for when our patrons came in to jump in our trampoline pits. We thought that was important to show our cleanliness and things like that. So that's something that we've been tasked to. My 3 kids are out there right now jumping through the foam and helping us out. So it's crazy right now, but I hope we're coming to a close on COVID and re-entering a new phase of the new normal.
Do you feel like you've gotten good guidance from the city of Wichita? I'm not involved in the thought process of reopening a business. Like I kind of had mentioned earlier, I work from home. There's 2 of us in the office. So for us, we're not even really paying attention because it's just so, we can adapt to whatever. But I'm curious, do you feel like you guys have gotten good guidance from the city of Wichita of what they're expecting or what they're looking moving forward?
It's really hit or miss. We really haven't had much communication, if at all, with the city of Wichita. It's really been with the county and the county commissioners, and our commissioner, Commissioner Meitzner on this side of town, has been just great. A guy that's going to answer the telephone when we call. We've had concerns. I'm fortunate to have some ownership in my brother's company as well, the Mattress Hub, and I'll tell you what, our commissioners have been awesome, just communicating with us and really helping us walk through. But a lot of it is they don't know either.
Right.
And so playing through those scenarios and how can we make sure that, when we do open, what is it going to look like? What's the new norm? How can we, A, protect our employees, B, protect our patrons that are coming through these doors? And so those are things that are going to be, hit or miss here and there. We're going to get into this and just like everybody, we're going to try to figure out how to get people through these doors and try to put on an event. And it's going to have its challenges, but, we got to continue to work through those things and work with our county commissioners and get feedback. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to do what's right. And we're not trying to, to put people in harm's way. And so, but overall, Weston, to answer your question, the county commissioners have been awesome.
Good.
We've got Matt Baty on Keeper of the Games with us here on this episode. And over the weekend, Matt, article came out in the Wichita Eagle talking a lot about the brand new Wichita Youth Basketball League, which is the primary reason why we wanted to have you on the podcast. It's a joint venture between the Wichita Sports Forum, Wichita Hoops, and the MAYB. Obviously, competitive sports today are a lot different than they were even just 5 or 10 years ago. You kind of mentioned that the whole this whole venture sort of was birthed out of COVID. Talk a little bit about that process and the need that you guys saw in forming this brand new league in Wichita.
We have two great facilities on the east side of town in the Wichita Sports Forum and Wichita Hoops. And then you have this operator that is just phenomenal. They've been around for 27 years. They have a great name. They have, they've just ran tons and tons of tournaments, but they've really never dabbled in the league side. And so I called a meeting, and when I took back over as the GM at the Sports Forum, I called a meeting to meet the general manager at Wichita Hoops, and we started just brainstorming. And we constantly compete with each other every single day. We're competing with the same tournaments. We're competing for the same athletes every day. And so it was interesting as we sat down, we kind of mapped out a plan of, hey, how could we work together? And one thing that's, certain in this town is we have an unbelievable YMCA system here. I mean, I don't think people realize, Weston, you're from Wichita, right? Yep. And you live in Kansas City. Yep. The YMCA's look nothing like they do in Wichita.
No, I brought a friend back home when I was in law school, just to go back down for the weekend, and I remember him saying, "That's a YMCA? Are you kidding me?" Like they just could not fathom, that those were YMCA's, and why were they so nice?
Yeah, and it's unreal. And so they've done an unbelievable job of programming and meeting the needs of the city of Wichita when it comes to leagues and tournaments and all sorts of things. And Catherine, their sports director for the Farhas, was actually my graduate assistant at KU when I was in market as a marketing coordinator there. So I know Catherine; she does a great job, and so they've had a foothold on the league structures here in Wichita for a long time. And so when I was here the first time, we tried like heck to jump into that space, into the league space, and just couldn't get any traction because they have such a great name and all that. So through COVID, it was an opportunity as everybody was kind of sitting still and no programming was going on. This was an opportunity to kind of brainstorm how can we jump into that space. And we're not trying to take the YMCA teams. We're trying to provide another option for the youth of Wichita. And so I called Tim Semino at the Wichita Hoops, and we sat down and we said, hey, let's work together. How can we create a league that people would be excited about? And quickly it morphed into, well, why don't we grab MAYB, an unbelievable operator in this market with a great name? Why don't we grab them and see if we can put something together? So we collaborated with Matt Fleming of MAYB, director of MAYB, and Greg Raleigh, and sat down and put this bad boy together. And now you get what you get, what you've seen publicly. But there's a lot of work that's went behind the scenes, and a lot more still to come when it comes to launching. But it's been a fun league to launch from its birth, and we'll see where it goes. I think the future is awfully bright for it.
Talk a little bit about the, one of the things in the article was the I guess, for lack of a better term, the lifeline that this provides to the MAYB. I don't think a lot of people were aware of the fact that, obviously this pandemic has affected everybody in some way, shape, or form, but it really looked like, especially reading this article, that the MAYB, they were on life support a little bit, with all of this. And it almost seems like this league has sort of been able to come in and really help them on a financial level too.
Yeah, like you said, everybody is trying to figure out, what tomorrow is going to bring when it comes to COVID, and are people going to come back? Are tournaments going to come back? MAYB, I can't speak to their financials or anything, but MAYB, their meat and potatoes is summer basketball tournaments, and so if you're not going to have summer basketball tournaments, it's going to be very hard to make revenue. It is a for-profit. And so, as we sat and talked about, it was a way for them to kind of maneuver a little bit and, start taking a look at other areas that they can look for revenue streams. And so, we wanted to make this league affordable, knowing that we were going to utilize two beautiful facilities, two great facilities. So we want to make it affordable, but we also wanted to bring MAYB along and have them handle the registration side of it, because that's what they do. They register. They have 10 to 12 people in their office that work 8 to 5 every day, if not longer, making phone calls, sending emails, signing up teams. And so we wanted a part of that operation as well. And so there we are. That's why we wanted to bring MAYB in, so they could be get a piece of this pie and help grow the sport of basketball in Wichita.
Matt, I'm curious if, kind of across the nation, I know AAU is really kind of the predominant basketball league out there for the high school kids. And I know MAYB is essentially that same model. It just hasn't really risen to the level of AAU. Does AAU have any partnership or a model that you guys were able to look at to kind of say, hey, maybe here's what we wanted to do? Or is it, was this really just kind of a brainchild of you guys and there's really nothing else out there like it? And particularly, and I'm asking a lot of questions all at once, but I kind of think of it like high school baseball and really where that's morphed, how you have showcase after showcase and tournament, and high school baseball in itself has almost become so irrelevant to getting kids to college. And is that almost kind of what maybe you guys are even looking at here with what you can provide, almost a showcase style of basketball for high school kids even in season?
Yeah, MAYB has been around for, like you said, 27 years, and it started from the grassroots effort. And so I wouldn't compare it to AAU by any means. AAU is more of I would say you're more of your premier looking for those scholarships. Not that saying MAYB is not looking for scholarship, but really it's MAYB is a league or a tournament for anybody and everybody, from the third division, third grade team to the first division, 11th grade, varsity team. You can kind of wear, all sorts of hats in this league. So, and tournaments. So, AAU, I think, is a totally different animal and beast, especially when you get into, the Nike EYBL. Sure. The Adidas Gauntlet and Under Armour, and then Reebok's doing some stuff. And so MAYB, I would describe it as more of a grassroots effort. It's basketball for everybody. Yes, it's going to have the premier athlete in it, but if you're looking at numbers, it's more of the beginner to middle level talent. And then, mixed in with some big time talent through MAYB.
So are you?
But
are you guys looking more? So kind of what you're looking to provide is more the guys out there and higher end talent. I mean, within the city of Wichita that are trying to get better for their high school season is more what you're doing than trying to necessarily say, hey, you like AAU. It's like you just need to be on an AAU team. That's where you're getting your eyes out. This is more for we want you to come here. Use this league to help you get better for your high school squad or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it was important for us to have a midweek league because where most of these kids are playing more competitive is on the weekends. Right. And so we wanted to utilize the midweek to get reps. And these kids, as we all know, if you want to be a good baseball player, basketball player, soccer, whatever, you have to do it. And you have to do it a lot. And so we're given an opportunity for these athletes to play more games midweek and set them up for the weekend. And so, and use the analogy of what baseball's gone to. It's interesting how baseball is when you get to high school, when you're 15, it's all about showcases. There really isn't a grassroots for high school baseball anymore. It's showcase. And so, it's hard to, it's not, I always said in baseball, it's really easy, not easy. It's easier to get a scholarship in baseball because, there's so many scholarships out there. There's so many programs that offer baseball. And so, if you want a scholarship in baseball, there's an opportunity for you. Now, it might not be D1, it might not be D2 or D3, but it might be junior college, it could be, NAIA, but there is opportunity for you. And basketball, what we're trying to provide here is an opportunity to fall in love with the sport and continue with that love. And then, if you continue and you want to make your high school team and you want to make a college team, obviously this is a avenue to get better.
What's the response been like? I mean, obviously, this has been public for a few days now. I would imagine that, both facilities are probably fielding phone calls, right? I mean, what has the reaction been from the city of Wichita?
Well, what's interesting is both facilities are shut down right now due to COVID and the restrictions that the governor's laid out in phase 1. And so we don't have the staff to answer the phones. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring MAYB on, is because they have the staff that can answer the calls and answer the emails. And so I talk to Matt Fleming, almost every day, and they're fielding a lot of questions. They're sending a lot of emails. One thing that's unique that we're doing that both facilities decided to do, that if you practice in or if you play in our league, we're going to give you 2 practice times free. And then we're going to give you an hour time during the week for $20, which is normally $55 for an hour to practice in our facilities. And so we're going to give it, if you play in our league, for $20. So we've been fielding a lot of those questions. Hey, when can I get some court time? Those type of things. But I really do think it's, like I said in the paper, it's we got to walk before we run. We might be jogging a little bit sooner than what probably wanted, just because of COVID. But we got to fill this out, and we're going to be flexible. The number one question that people ask is, what are you doing, to make sure that my son's safe, my daughter's safe? And so we're answering some of those questions right now. And we will not launch this league if it wasn't safe. And so we'll continue to monitor that. And we're putting some procedures and policies in place to make sure that it's a great experience for everybody.
And right now that tentative date is what, June 15th? Is that right?
June 15th for the tournament. We will open up May 18th. We'll open up the sports side of the Wichita Sports Forum to start practices since we qualify under phase 2. But the league will not start until phase 3 is in motion, which, if all goes well, we're hoping June 15th.
We've got Matt Baty, General Manager of the Wichita Sports Forum, on Keeper of the Games with us, talking about the brand new Wichita Youth Basketball League. And, we would be remiss if we've got Matt on the podcast to not talk a little bit about the University of Kansas. And there are some things that I know Matt can't get into today. Just, what was that, maybe a month ago, Weston, or a month and a half ago, we did an episode that really focused in on the ongoing legal battle between the University of Kansas and former head football coach David Baty, which I know, Matt, you were a part of that. I know that's something that you can't really get into, you can't really talk about. And so we absolutely respect that. But at the same time, want to let our listeners know that we're not, we didn't just forget about it. We, deliberately are not going to ask you questions about that because we know you can't really talk about that. That being said, though, there are some other issues going on with the University of Kansas that are semi-related to that, but not fully. And that's the NCAA investigation going on right now into the KU basketball program. And there have been, story after story after story coming out over the last couple of weeks with, the notice of allegations, then the response to the notice of allegations, then the NCAA's response, and back and forth. Before we really dive into it, what's your 30,000-foot opinion on this whole debacle? What's going on with the basketball investigation at KU?
It's, I got opinion after opinion on it, and obviously I have some experience in the college atmosphere and, in the ins and outs. And, I feel for Bill as he goes through this and Curtis as they go through it. It's not fun. They're great people, and I'm glad to see that the administration has their back and Jeff Long and Chancellor Gerard. And so I'm anxious, just like everybody else, every KU fan out there. I'm anxious to see what transpires through this. But it's a mess for the NC2A. I'm not a I'm not an attorney like Weston. I'm passionate about Kansas basketball and University of Kansas, and Bill I consider a good friend, and I just hate seeing him go through this, and I wish him nothing but the best. But the NC2A, like I was saying, it just has a mess on their hands with all the programs, and I'm just, what I hope is, and what I think is happening through what I'm seeing is I think KU's ready for a fight, and I'm kind of excited about it because I think Jeff and Chancellor Gerard and Bill and the administration have chosen the right path, and they're going to fight. And what my opinion is what I hope this is the start of the end of the NC2A personally. And so that's where I'd like to see things heading. And I think they've lost control. The NC2A's lost control of this mess, and where things are heading in the NC2A with paying student athletes now for name and likeness. And I just don't see how they're going to have much control. So, we've talked many times where I think this thing is heading. I think it's heading to super conferences, and I think it's going to be 4 16-team conferences. And I think this is the opportunity for the University of Kansas to be leaders in the industry and lead us out and lead everybody else out of the NC2A. That's
an incredible opinion that I don't think I've heard, but makes a lot of sense. So I think for someone who had been in the industry, it's exciting for me to hear you say that, knowing that, hey, there are models where folks see this could work. I'm curious, and certainly if I ask anything that you just can't, speak to, please just tell me. But I'm curious what, in your role at Kansas, what you saw as, because I'm sure that you probably had to work that line with what boosters were giving to the program and what and who is considered a booster. Because as I've read through the NCAA's response to KU's reply to these allegations, it seems like this is going to boil down to whether Adidas and Gasnola and Gatto are considered boosters of the organization. And I'll certainly share my opinion a little bit as I've kind of read through the bylaws and what it's saying is a booster. But I'm curious if you have had any expectation of what that was while you were working at Kansas.
Well, I think having read everything, I think the case kind of boils down to this. And Weston, again, you're the attorney here, so tell me if I'm wrong. I think the case boils down to KU has an Adidas sponsorship, right? That is they give us a lot of money. But that said booster had, or not said, I take that back. Don't say booster. That said sponsor, that's the key word, right? The NC2A is saying they're a booster, and KU is saying they're not a booster. And the whole thing boils down to that right there. And so KU saying, yes, it's come out that Adidas reps paid student athletes. And from my understanding, they've admitted that there was transactions taking place with KU student athletes without their knowledge. So the NC2A is taking the stance of they are a booster, and therefore, because they are a booster, you are being held accountable to what boosters can't do, and that is obviously pay student athletes. And so, it's pretty simple, the case between the two, in my opinion, just from reading it. But, I worked with, Adidas on a daily basis, but certainly never ever heard the word booster when it came to Adidas. And so that word was never used.
Yeah, I think
so. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was going to add is that was kind of that's been KU's biggest position, obviously, right? Is to say that Adidas, who's a corporate entity, who's a shoe sponsor, is a booster, it is going to crumble the system that you have, because every single organization and school out there has a shoe sponsor who is working closely with them, who all want the same things. Adidas wants their schools to do well, and Nike wants their schools to do well. And quick sidebar, we're about to get in a whole nother mess with Zion Williamson and Duke as that's unfolding now. This whole system's going to crumble. That's a whole nother side tangent to discuss with this. But I had not seen anywhere, okay, well, where is this clear definition? What is of Adidas being a booster? Because as the NCAA, you can say that Adidas is a booster, but it's got to be somewhere. There's got to be some precedent, or it's got to be in the bylaws. And that's basically what Kansas wasn't saying it. Well, this was kind of the first time in their reply where I saw the NCAA really put a clear picture in front of us of what they're saying their bylaws say. And they go on to say that, I'm going to read this because I think it's important. So Constitution 6.42, which is mirrored by bylaw 13.02.15, clearly states that institutions are responsible for the acts of a corporate entity, and then it's in parentheses, e.g. apparel or equipment manufacturer, when athletics administration or athletics department staff members have knowledge or should have knowledge of 5 outlined behaviors. So, and then these are kind of important. I don't want to take up too much time on this, but these behaviors include participating in an agency or organization outlined in Constitution 6.41, so that will kind of pass by that one, making financial contributions to the athletics department or booster organizations. That's a big one that they hit on later. Number 3 is assisting in the recruitment of prospects at the request of an athletics department staff member or known to be assisting. That's going to be another one that they hit on big. And then providing benefits to enrolled student athletes or otherwise promoting the institution's athletics. So they're indicating that this has clearly been outlined from the jump, essentially, which in Kansas is, I kind of have read some articles since then where they're saying, look, it isn't what they're painting. I mean, it's not as clear as that as what they're painting in this thing. But I thought it was interesting that they were able to cite to, a constitutional provision and then a specific bylaw within, the NCAA's rules. But, and from there, I haven't dove in enough to everything to kind of say whether I think, hey, they're really stretching what this is saying, or they're picking out nice quotes from, to kind of slap this around. But I think you're right, Matt. I think this is headed for a much deeper legal battle than just whatever the NCAA says it is. Kansas isn't going to just let that be.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the beginning, I think, of the end of the NC2A, and that's what I hope. Obviously they've done some good things, and people, lose sight of that in these type of situations. But, overall, I think this is the beginning of the end. And I think it's an opportunity for KU to lead the charge and be industry leaders and looked upon. You look back on it 40 years from now, I hope it says University of Kansas led the charge as a proud Jayhawk. So, it's interesting, having been in a position of leading fundraising efforts at KU and Wichita State, I know what a booster is. Yeah. And dealt with them on a daily basis. That's what we did on a daily, on the daily. So, and worked on the marketing side with Adidas. And so, for them to label them as a booster, I think is a stretch. Because I've been in the industry for a while, and I've never heard them called a booster. I can't think of times we sent them literature or anything like that on being a booster or anything like that, like we do for every other donor that we have. So, it's interesting. I think it's all going to play out in due time, obviously, but there's some good people getting hurt right now, and there's some great people in that athletic department that are on pins and needles, and I hope it all gets worked out and live to fight another day.
So a couple questions for you about this from my perspective. So your first question is, are you surprised at all by how vigorous Kansas has mounted a defense? I mean, the fact that they, in their original response, I think one of the opinions I read about their response was that Kansas went scorched earth on the NCAA. And then the same thing with Bill Self. I mean, Bill Self has his own team of lawyers And it looks like he's preparing for, a bare knuckle fight as well with the NCAA. So that's my first question. Are you surprised by their strong defense? Second question is that, to my knowledge, the players that have been sort of in question throughout all of this are players that either have been sat out by the institution while those issues were worked through, or they were players that didn't end up with the university in the end anyway. So, and maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe there are some examples of players that are, kind of tied up in this that had extended careers with Kansas, but not to my knowledge, at least. So are you surprised that the NCAA, it almost seems like they've wanted to try to use Kansas as a scapegoat, and to set an example when obviously, there are these high profile recruits that are being alleged to be paid, but they ended up at other institutions in the end anyway. So are you surprised by that?
I think the scorched earth approach that the University of Kansas has taken is the right one. I'm as an alum, I'm proud to see that angle, because Bill is a man of integrity. And he's standing there saying, I don't know any of this, never been a part of it. As Kansas fans, we should be at peace at that, as a guy with his statute and everything he's done and stood for, his word means something. And so I'm glad that the administration is backing him in the scorched earth, but the NC2A, in my opinion, is embarrassed, right? This has been going on supposedly with the shoe companies for many years. You can date it back to, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure in the 80s, I've heard stories of back in the 70s and 80s of things like this happening. So when you talk to people and so in the industry, and they're embarrassed. And so they have somebody with, it's like sharks in the water, right? There's chum in the water. So I think the NC2A is looking for a big fish that they're trying to take down because they're embarrassed. And I think they're trying to hit them upside the jaw and going to try to take out Goliath. And if there is a Goliath in basketball, there's 3 or 4 of them, and Bill Self's one of them. And so, which is sad because he's throughout his career, he's shown, how good of a person he is and how great of a program that he runs. And let's not be forgotten here. The University of Kansas has one of the best and robust compliance departments in the entire country. David Reed and his group is phenomenal. Top 3 to 5 compliance administrator in the country. He was at Miami during their whole chaos, or came in to clean it up. And so, David Reed is connected as all get out. He knows what he's doing. And here's the other thing, the important thing is things didn't happen in that athletic department without David Reed knowing. And so that's what's great about it is the robust compliance department. So I'm telling you, as good as he is, if there was something like that, he would have sniffed that out a long time ago. So that's what gives me comfort in knowing that nothing happened and everything was on the up and up.
Well, and I think the biggest thing I was just going to add, I think the biggest thing that we can kind of take a step back, right, from what these allegations are and whether or not, Kansas did cross any lines or not, and step back from that and kind of say, okay, even if they did, here is the problem that is presenting itself. There isn't any other organization or university out there that's not doing the same thing. And I understand as a non-Kansas fan, probably what someone would say is, hey, you broke a rule, and you pay the punishment. And I don't disagree with that. But my problem is how does the NCAA continue to operate moving forward if they're going to need to start crumbling down every major, institution around them? And ultimately, what they have, especially as the players are starting a little bit to gain a little bit more of their own ability to profit for themselves, what they have are these blue blood programs, and then obviously the tournament itself, that bring in all this revenue, and it's not going to behoove them to basically bring down these programs that are ultimately making them the money. So, I think they've got an interesting approach to make that decision.
Yeah.
If you want to make an example out of someone because you think everyone else will fall in line, fine. But maybe we need to have a reality check of, is that going to be the case? Or are you going to need to start smacking Duke and North Carolina and UCLA and Louisville and Texas and every other organization out there? Then you're going to have a revenue problem when your biggest programs are now being smacked and hurt, and their attendance and their fanship is down because they can't put a product on the court.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the other schools and what they do and how they do it, and certainly, can't speak to how Kansas does things now. But there's a problem when you allow the NC2A knows that these shoe companies put on these massive AAU tournaments, invite these coaches. There's no restriction from what a Nike EYBL team or an Adidas Gauntlet team, what they pay a coach. There's no restriction. So the NC2A has known that these things go on in this world, and they've turned the blind eye, right? They've constantly turned the blind eye, knowing that there's bad stuff going on the AAU circuit, bad stuff. And so there's coaches being paid, student athletes being paid, all sorts of things. And so until they shut down the AAU circuit, which I'm not saying they should, and then you get into the whole Jay Billis argument is, do these student athletes deserve to be paid, and why aren't they, and why can't they? Why are they losing their eligibility? I mean, it's crazy. Some of these kids, some of the stories that you'd hear of where these coaches go into basketball, football, baseball. I mean, some of the situations that they walk into, the recruiting, they come from nothing, some of these kids. Absolutely nothing. And so am I shocked that there's money being exchanged hands on the circuits? Not at all.
Right.
Not at all. Am I okay with it? Yes.
And
I'm okay.
The other thing, too, is what incentive does Adidas or that student athlete have to not take the money? Because they don't care about whether you're eligible to play at Kansas. That kid wants to go play in the league. So to have $90,000 now, he's not – that risk of not being eligible for 1 year at Kansas is always going to be worth it to him to take that money, because that's not the goal. The goal is to provide for his family. And so, of course, he's going to take that risk. And if you're Adidas or Nike or Under Armour or whoever, there's no incentive to not provide those kids to hopefully get that guy who's on your big shoe deal who becomes an NBA star, because, again, they don't have really any incentive to if Kansas or someone else gets punished, there's really no incentive for them to stop what they're doing. It doesn't hurt them too much. I mean, obviously, Adidas wants to see Kansas do well because they're tied with them, but that's not where the money's made. The money is made by having, when Adidas had Kobe Bryant and then lost him to Nike. Like, those are the kind of things that, those shoe companies, that's where their bread and butter is.
Oh, no, I mean, you watched the Last Dance, right? And what was it, episode 4 or 5, where, talking about the Jordan shoes and how much money is in shoes. Right. And that's what these, Adidas wants to sell shoes. Right. They want to sell gear. They want their best athletes in their shoes. And so, obviously the best athletes typically go to the best schools. And so, when it comes to basketball. And so, the fact that Adidas wants the best, top 10 player to go to Adidas school, that's no surprise. Same thing with Nike. It's no surprise whatsoever. And so what happens before they get to the University of Kansas It's what's done is done.
Right.
Not what, these guys are putting on. I think the coach at Notre Dame, right, came out and talked about, how he utilizes the Adidas and Nike and all that. I think they're an Adidas school, Notre Dame. And of course, these coaches, it's just like in baseball. I own a baseball academy, right? Mm-hmm. Coaches call me and talk to me about a player on the team, right? I'm not associated. I'm not paying anybody, but I'm associated because I coach or I'm in the organization with this team, or I call and say, hey, coach, you need to take a look at this kid. Is that considered assisting with recruiting? I guess so. I have no problem walking up to a kid and saying, hey, or giving Coach Price a call at KU and saying, or the Wichita State coach and saying, hey, you need to watch this kid. I think that's how it's used. I think that's for the betterment of these kids, right, to get them in the best situation as possible. So yes, is Adidas want the best top 10 talent at the University of Kansas or Kentucky or wherever, or Nike for Kentucky? Absolutely, 100%. But what happens to get them there, I 100% believe is on the shoe companies and the lack of control that the NC2A has on them, and nothing to do with the coaches. Nothing. Not all of them are clean, but as we've seen. But we're the University of Kansas. Do we really need to pay kids cash? I don't know. I don't think so.
Final question for you before we let you go. Obviously, we could probably sit and talk NCAA and all the corruption, for a couple of different hours. But my final question for you, and maybe Weston has one more after me, but my final question is, obviously the NCAA came out a couple weeks ago talking about making recommendations now that, athletes can profit off of their name, image, and likeness. You touched on that a little bit ago. Your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously it's allowing these athletes to be able to finally profit off of who they are and their name and all of that. Is that a positive step in the right direction? I think the NCAA obviously wanted a lot of credit for that, but a lot of people are saying they should have done that years ago. So your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's certainly a positive step. These kids are, these universities are making millions and millions of dollars off these kids. I think it's, as a free business, person, I'm all about these kids making money based on their name and likeness. How they're going to control it, I think, is going to be chaos. Right. Yeah. And how do they make it equal? I think an issue that's going to happen, let's use Wichita State as an example, and let's use Kansas State as an example, because, they're recruiting, let's say they're recruiting the same similar type of talent. What's going to happen is Wichita State's going to go and recruit a kid, and K-State's going to recruit the kid. And we go at Wichita State, we go to Rusty Eck and say, hey, this kid will do a advertisement, a commercial for you. It's going to cost you $250,000 though. And the kid's going to go to K-State and they're going to go to Briggs Auto, and Briggs Auto is going to go, I'll give you $350,000. And then Rusty Eck is going to come back and say, you know what, we'll do $500,000, but we're going to take that portion out of the marketing budget that you're getting for the school. And so there's only enough dollars that go around, right? Yeah. And so, somebody's going to get stripped of money, and it's just going to be a war. And I think it's only going to be worse because some of these big schools with big spenders and big pockets, I mean, you talk about opening the bank, this is going to get crazy. And so then while a kid's playing the sport at the university, is he going to be worried about, can he hire an agent to handle all of his logo and his branding and all of that? And so you think the AAU circuit and these handlers are people that are, grab happy. Wait till you start throwing even more money when it comes to licensing and things like this, the people that are going to surround these kids is kind of scary. There's some sharks out there that are just looking out for numero uno, not looking out for the kid. And so I'm anxious. I got sent some legislation the other day. I try to keep up with it now that I'm out. I don't see it every day, but I try to keep up with it. I got sent some legislation the other day that I'll pass on to you guys for to look at. But
Great.
It's going to be interesting what the NCAA decides to do. And I've had a couple people local here reach out to me asking, is there ways to get into the space of, some promotional people, promotional businesses trying to get into the space and looking for avenues. And so, you got every Tom, Dick, and Harry going to look to enter that space because there's going to be an unbelievable opportunity there.
Well, yeah, I definitely think that we are probably on the verge of, some big time revolution when it comes to the world of the NCAA for sure. Weston, did you have anything else for Matt?
No, I'll bring it full circle back to why we brought you up to the beginning. I was a proud MAYB kid from like 7th grade through high school, so I had some of my best memories playing in MAYB tournaments. And matter of fact, and part of why I had texted Tommy about when I read this article and thought, man, this is a really cool idea what they're doing over there. Because I even remember taking one of my MAYB teams that I played on, and we played in like a Newman League or something on the weeknights. And that Newman League was like a mix of like, the old guys that were just trying to get out and play, then your high school kids who didn't make their basketball team but wanted somewhere to play, and then us who were all, starting varsity basketball players that were just trying to get better, and the talent just didn't always quite match. And so I think it's a really cool what you guys are doing, and I think it'll bring a lot to the city of Wichita. So very excited to have that around. Yeah,
we're certainly excited about the league and what it's going to bring to Wichita. And we hope, hope things slow down here with COVID and or pick back up, if you will, and allow us to get open and provide this great league for the community and surrounding areas, because I think it's going to be fun. And when you're utilizing two great facilities, bouncing back and forth, and we get to showcase those two, and then I'll end with this: is Wichita. I don't think people realize we talked about the whys. But per capita, I can't imagine a better set of basketball courts that are available to the youth of Wichita than Wichita Sports Forum, Wichita Hoops, the YMCAs, and then you add in all these high schools, and heck, some of these elementary schools have unbelievable gyms, and it's unreal. And so we're hungry for to bring in a big time tournament, with Visit Wichita and things like that, because we can host some big stuff here in Wichita with the amount of courts that we have.
If there are folks that want to get in touch and they're interested in the league, obviously you guys are closed for right now. Do they just need to contact MAYB?
Yeah, contact MAYB. Best way for them is MAYB at MAYB.com. They will answer your questions, and if there's any specific questions for the facility, obviously they'll pass those on, but you can always email me at matt@WichitaSportsForum.com, and I'll get your questions answered. And then once we get the phone system back up and operational, we'll be able to take the calls.
The Wichita Youth Basketball League tentatively kicks off June 15th at the Wichita Sports Forum and Wichita Hoops in collaboration with MAYB. Matt Baty, General Manager of the Wichita Sports Forum, my friend, thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully you can come back and do it again sometime.
Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it. Thanks, Weston.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
That's Matt Baty from the Wichita Sports Forum here on Keeper of the Games. And, just like that, I mean, we almost talked an entire hour with him, Weston, and, obviously a good friend of mine and a lot of great information to share for sure.
Yeah. Perfect time to have him on too. Kind of, the fact that he wrapped into two big topics for the area so prevalently. I think that worked well. It was nice to get his thoughts, especially on someone who was involved in donations and bringing in money for the University of Kansas, to kind of hear what his thoughts were on who they consider a booster and what they think of the NCAA, or what at the time, of course, what his thoughts were in the university's thoughts kind of had been on how this was all shaping out. So really interesting, and glad he could come on.
We're going to get into the Wichita Whiparound right now on Keeper of the Games. We're going to stay with Kansas basketball as a four-star prospect, Zach Clemence, commits to the Jayhawks, and he is a Sunrise Christian Academy player committing to the Jayhawks. This news broke just less than 24 hours ago. Your initial thoughts on Zach Clemence going to the Jayhawks?
Yeah, sounds like he's going to be a really good fit. I've seen some Dedrick Lawson comparisons. I mean, I don't know about skill level, but at least style of play. He's really going to be kind of a stretch four, and really that's, the term stretch four is used these days, but really it's just what a modern big man brings to the game. He can step out, shoot the three, he handles the ball well. He's going to fit in a lot with, especially what Bill Self is doing now with a lot more 4 out, 1 in. He's the kind of player you want him to pair with a Udoka Azubuike or maybe a more of your traditional big man that you have. So brings in a lot of talent. Exciting that you can kind of keep someone from the Wichita area to the University of Kansas, and I think they're really going to like what Zach Clemence can bring.
Yeah, he's a guy that was heavily recruited. I mean, he's the second highest ranked recruit in the state of Kansas, but he was being recruited heavily by teams like Ohio State, Baylor, and many others across the country for sure. Are you surprised at all by, he's class of 2021, so he's got his whole senior season to play. Are you surprised that a guy like Zach Clemence committed so early to Kansas?
Not necessarily. I think when you have like the University of Kansas, obviously, if he kind of waits around and they get somebody that comes through that they might have interest in that's a little bit at least rated better than him, he may not think anybody's better than him, which I would completely understand. But, if there are those guys out there, he may want to take that scholarship before someone else is showing interest. And I really think this, again, kind of goes to show maybe the lack of concern for what the NCAA can do to the university ultimately, or especially with the players knowing they've got avenues to make money while they're at college, or if he's looking on, going to the league. I think it's just whatever allegation or whatever infractions and punishment penalties are coming. I think it's a good sign to see that there's not any, too much of a concern, at least from this one recruit.
Well, there could be a thought, too, that, on the chance that Kansas is stripped of a couple scholarships, that at least he's claimed one right now, right, before anything else potentially happens. This looks to be a pretty valuable addition, like you mentioned, to the front court of Kansas when that time comes, because when he makes his way to Lawrence, you're looking at a team without guys like Mitch Lightfoot and Silvio De Sousa, and even potentially David McCormick as well. So he's a guy that could fit in quite nicely in that front court. We haven't, the Kansas hasn't had to look at really rebuilding a front court for a while when you had guys like Udoka Azubuike down low and Silvio De Sousa and so on and so forth. But I think it's smart for Coach Self and the staff to look at, all right, what are we going to do after 2021 in our front court? So Zach Clemence will be the newest Jayhawk as he committed to the University of Kansas. He graduates at the end of 2021. That's going to wrap things up for the Wichita Whiparound. Before we get out of here, before we wrap up the show, I want to say a big congratulations, like he really needs it, but a big congratulations to Patrick Mahomes, who is the consensus favorite at Caesars Sportsbook in Vegas to win the NFL MVP award this season. He is 4-1 odds to win his second regular season MVP award in the past 3 years. And no surprise, Lamar Jackson from the Ravens right behind him at 13-2 odds to win the award back-to-back seasons. And then you've got guys, from there like Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and then the first non-quarterback is Christian McCaffrey at 40-1 odds. Before we talk about Pat, and I'll let you get into your thoughts on Pat being picked to be the consensus favorite, I'm a little surprised that Dak Prescott is third at 9-1. Are you surprised by that?
I have very strong opinions on Dak Prescott. I think he is very overrated. But I'll give you a quick story on Pat in the MVP race. I actually had, and this is one of those stories people probably don't care too much about, but I'm going to tell it anyways. His rookie year, I was actually out in Vegas. I was doing some meeting with one of our Las Vegas offices out there prior to the season starting. And at that time, Pat started out the season, I want to say it was 33-1. And I'd gotten clearance from my then fiance, now wife, to go ahead and put some money down on Pat to win the MVP. But we flew out there to Vegas, and the office was kind of in the suburbs, so we never made it up to the Strip, and I never put the money down. And then, as you know, or I said before his rookie season, but I guess it was before his second year season, first season playing when he won the MVP. Kicking myself ever since that I didn't get some money on Pat to win MVP.
So knowing that he's 4-1 odds, are you going to go put money on him?
I mean, if they can, if the odds stay the same by the time Kansas can get up and running on their sports betting, which is coming down the pipe eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. Yeah, I may do it.
There we go. Yeah. So, Pat Mahomes is the consensus favorite to win the NFL MVP award, and Lamar Jackson right behind him. We are exactly at 1 hour. That's going to wrap things up for Keeper of the Games. Even with a big interview with Matt Baty, we still ended up right at 1 hour, which, I think we probably need to stop talking about it because it's just going to happen naturally here on out on the show. Yeah. Our thanks to Matt Baty, general manager of the Wichita Sports Forum, and a good friend of mine for joining us on Keeper of the Games today. And don't forget, if you want to connect with us, just hit that subscribe button and you can listen to Keeper of the Games anywhere you find your favorite podcasts, and you'll be notified anytime there's a brand new episode, so you never miss one. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, all the major podcast platforms. We are out there for you. You can also go to our website, cogpod.weebly.com. And then, of course, follow us on social media as well. You can watch this episode and all of our full episodes on YouTube and Facebook by searching Keeper of the Games, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CogPod. That's a lot of ways to connect with us, but we've tried to make it pretty easy for you to connect and do so right there with us. And of course, you can always follow us on Twitter ourselves. Weston, what is your Twitter handle?
At WMills94.
All right. And you can, of course, follow me at Tweets from Tommy. We'll be back with another edition of Keeper of the Games in just a few days. Until then, for Weston Mills, I'm Tommy Castor. We'll talk to you later.
Take care, guys.
You've been listening to Keeper of the Games with Tommy Castor and Weston Mills. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and listen on all major podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. Find the podcast and videos on Facebook and YouTube at Keeper of the Games, and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at CogPod. That's KOG Pod.